Stay with me till the end because what I'm about to explain could change how you prepare, protect, and act on your Iraqi dinar holdings. I'll walk you through a detailed step-by-step news-style breakdown of recent chatter that 12 major U.S. banks may be quietly preparing to handle Iraqi dinar transactions, what that could practically mean, and the exact checklist you should use to get ready without panicking. I promise to keep it simple, clear, and practical, no confusing finance jargon, no hype, and no wild promises. By the time this video finishes, you'll understand the difference between rumor and actionable preparation, the risks to watch for, and the precise everyday steps that can make verification and exchange faster and safer if official programs are announced. We will discuss how banks prepare behind the scenes, why they might do that, how you should organize physical notes, what documentation matters, how to store and move currency safely, why diversification helps, and how to read official announcements without getting misled. I'll also explain possible timelines and the red flags that usually signal scams or misinformation. Keep watching because near the end I'll give a concise 9-step readiness checklist you can start using today. Right now, let's get grounded in how we got here. For years, the Iraqi dinar IQD has been a topic of hope, rumor, and confusion among investors and collectors. The currency's exchangeability has historically been constrained by regulation, limited foreign liquidity, and political and economic uncertainty inside Iraq and in international relations. That background is important because it explains why any news about banks preparing gets amplified quickly. Preparing a banking system to handle significantly more of a seldom-traded currency is not purely technical work. It requires back-office upgrades, anti-fraud checks, compliance adjustments for anti-money laundering AML rules, relationships with central banks, and liquidity planning. When people say that banks are quietly preparing, they often mean that operational teams are running tests, updating systems to accept IQD, or adding IQD routing paths in their internal transaction chains so that if an official exchange program appears, the bank can process customer requests without huge delays. That kind of work can happen well before any public announcement, and it often stays internal until regulators or central banks give permission to go live. Now, about the claim that 12 major U.S. banks are involved. Hearing a specific number like 12 makes the story sound precise and believable, but precision in a rumor doesn't equal proof. It's common for viral finance stories to include a specific number because people find details convincing. The practical reality is this. Large global banks frequently run internal scenario planning for unusual but plausible events, including sudden demand for an exotic currency. Those preparations may involve testing correspondent banking connections, strengthening compliance workflows, or validating note authentication procedures. That doesn't automatically prove an imminent revaluation or guaranteed exchange pathway for retail holders. What it does suggest is that some institutions may be taking contingency planning seriously. If banks are truly testing IQD handling at scale, those tests are likely limited to internal tech sandboxes, compliance teams, and selected correspondent partners. Remember, for a bank to accept and process IQD at retail scale requires legal clarity, clear central bank directives, and predictable liquidity lines, none of which happen overnight. What could behind-the-scenes preparation look like in practice? Think of it as groundwork. Staff training, updating software to accept new currency routing codes, calibrating note verification gear, and configuring AML transaction monitoring rules to flag suspicious flows. Banks will often build test environments that simulate heavy volumes before enabling live processing. They'll also coordinate with correspondent banks, the intermediaries that move currency between countries, to confirm settlement processes. Another aspect is liquidity planning. Banks need to know where the dollars will come from when they buy IQD from customers, and they must be able to settle those transactions without causing imbalances on their own balance sheets. All of these tasks require caution, legal checks, and regulator visibility. The presence of preparatory activity does not equate to a public exchange program announcing immediate revaluation. Rather, it means that operational pathways are being laid so that if official authorization comes, processing can be handled efficiently. Let's talk about why this matters for you personally as an IQD holder. If operational pathways are being prepared by big banks, that could shorten the time between an official announcement and the moment holders can convert their currency through formal channels. Fast processing matters. It reduces the risk of bottlenecks, long lines, and confusion that can cause stress and errors. However, it's crucial to be realistic. Preparations do not guarantee favorable rates, preferential treatment, or special windows reserved only for early holders. What they do guarantee, in the best-case scenario, is better infrastructure to authenticate banknotes, verify ownership, and settle transactions. That infrastructure benefits everyone, assuming the central bank sets an official exchange program and regulators allow the process to happen. So, the practical takeaway is this: preparation by banks can be helpful, but it is only one piece of a much larger puzzle that includes central bank policy, international approvals, and legal frameworks. Okay, immediately useful actions. Start by organizing your physical IQD notes now. Sort them by denomination and condition, keeping high denomination notes like 25,000 or 50,000 notes separate. Clean, undamaged notes with visible serial numbers and minimal creases move through verification systems faster. Create an inventory list with denominations, serial numbers, condition notes, for example, crisp, lightly circulated, heavily folded, taped, torn, and where you purchased or received them. Put this list in a document on your computer and keep a printed copy with your notes. Make clear photographs of the front and back of every high-value note and save those images in multiple secure locations. The better organized your physical notes are, the less time banks and verifiers will need to confirm authenticity and ownership once official pathways open. Next, gather your documentation. Banks and regulators will expect clear proof of ownership to prevent fraud and money laundering. Collect purchase receipts, bank transfer records, shipping receipts if applicable, and any written correspondence related to your purchase. Include a scanned copy of your photo ID and proof of address because many banks require that for identity verification. If you ever purchased notes in person, document where and when. If you acquired them secondhand or over time, create a dated log that shows acquisition history. Supporting documentation reduces friction. When exchange windows open, well-documented holders are less likely to be delayed by questions or extra compliance checks. Keep all original receipts in a secure place, and make certified photocopies if you plan to mail anything to an exchange agent later. Security matters enormously. Large amounts of physical currency can make you a target. Store notes in a safe deposit box or a high-quality home safe rated for cash. Avoid carrying large sums in public. If you plan to transport notes to a bank, use discreet, secure methods. Consider bringing a trusted companion and plan routes and timing carefully. Do not post images of large stacks of banknotes publicly or on social media where they can be used to target you. Be cautious about offers from private couriers or unknown third-party exchangers. Prefer well-established banks with clear procedures. If you use a local bank to initiate an exchange, ask about insured transport and what internal security measures they use. Taking security seriously protects not just the value of your currency, but your personal safety and legal standing. Diversification is a practical hedge. Don't place all your reliance on a single bank, service, or rumor channel. Different institutions have varying strengths. Some banks and exchanges are better at handling high-denomination note verification. Others have stronger liquidity lines and can handle large volume trades. by exploring and pre-vetting multiple legitimate banks and reputable exchange services now and making notes of their documentation requirements, fees, and timelines. You reduce the risk that a single bottleneck will cause a long delay. Keep in mind that early promises from unofficial intermediaries are often unreliable. Use the diversification strategy to increase resilience, not to chase early or secret deals. Community intelligence can be helpful, but treat it carefully. Forums and social media are places where holders trade tips, share experiences, and alert each other about practical issues like which banks are accepting certain paperwork faster. That said, these channels also breed rumors and sometimes intentional deception. Verify anything you hear through official bank channels or through well-vetted community members with documented, verifiable experiences. If someone claims to have converted notes through a particular bank, ask for detailed, dated screenshots or receipts, not vague testimonials. Save reputable discussions as references for when you approach banks, but always cross-check community tips with bank representatives or official announcements. Let's cover mindset and emotional discipline. News like this can trigger excitement, fear, or urgency. Those emotions can lead to mistakes. Sharing too much information publicly, engaging with unverified intermediaries, or rushing to sell to non-bank buyers at poor rates. Treat this as a long-term strategic play. If official exchange programs begin, there will likely be processes, document checks, and timelines. Being calm, meticulous, and patient will serve you better than reacting to the loudest rumor. Plan your steps, follow your checklist, and rely on secure, verified channels to execute exchanges. Emotional discipline reduces mistakes and protects your investment. Now we need to examine the risks and red flags. Be wary of any offer that guarantees an immediate large profit, requires secrecy, or asks for upfront fees to hold your place in a queue. Be skeptical of private sales where buyers ask for shipping without using insured couriers. Watch for unsolicited messages or calls promising special inside access. Those are classic markers of scams. Also, if someone pressures you to convert through a private intermediary with promises of a better rate than major banks, walk away and verify with a bank instead. Remember, real banks will never ask you to send notes to a private P.O. box without insured transport or backed documentation. Verification procedures will matter a lot if and when exchanges start. Banks will likely verify each note's serial number and condition, cross-check the serials against any available central bank records, and run identity verification to ensure ownership. Expect extra scrutiny for high-denomination notes and large totals. If a bank has an electronic system to read and log serial numbers, that will speed things up. If they do it manually, that will take longer. Organize your notes in clear stacks with labels. That reduces the time verifiers need to examine them. The goal of bank verification is to prevent fraud, duplicate claims, and money laundering. So, providing neat, complete documentation and an organized inventory is the most effective way to move through those checks faster. Timing is tricky and often misunderstood. Even if banks are preparing behind the scenes, the official launch of any exchange program depends on central bank policy, international agreements, and regulator approvals. That means there could still be weeks or months between internal bank readiness and public exchange windows. Some preparations can also be exploratory and never become live services. Therefore, don't confuse system testing with immediate availability. Monitor official central bank announcements, credible regulator statements, and established bank communications for real timelines. If you act based on internal rumor rather than official guidance, you risk making poor decisions. Let's zoom out to the bigger picture. Why would banks do prep work quietly? Because global finance runs on preparedness. Banks run scenario exercises for many contingencies, including political changes, regulatory shifts, or new clearing requirements. Preparing to handle an increase in IQD activity is a sensible operational step if there's plausible expectation of increased demand or a policy shift. It's not an endorsement that a revaluation will happen, nor is it a guarantee of instant conversion rights for all holders. What it does show is that the financial system recognizes that if policy changes occur, they want to be operationally ready to manage flows, compliance, and customer service without chaos. Regulatory and legal frameworks are major gatekeepers. Even if banks want to process exchanges, national regulators, central banks, and international correspondent banks must be satisfied that trades comply with AML, counterterrorism financing, and foreign exchange regulations. This is why documentation matters. Banks must demonstrate to auditors and regulators that they can trace funds and validate ownership. Without clear regulatory approvals or central bank exchange instructions, banks will be reluctant to offer full retail exchange services. So, legal clarity is a cornerstone for converting rumor into reality. Liquidity is another critical piece. For every IQD a holder sells, somebody must buy it. Often the bank will sell the equivalent in USD or other currencies. Whoever is at the other side needs liquidity. That liquidity can come from central bank reserves, correspondent banking lines, or market makers who agree to take on temporary currency positions. Preparing liquidity lines takes time and capital, and banks will only allocate those resources when they see a credible near-term plan. That's why observing banks' preparatory behavior sometimes signals that they see a credible chance of higher IQD activity, but again, that's not the same as certainty. Now let's talk about fees and rates in realistic terms. If an official program begins, banks will set fees to cover verification, transport, compliance checks, and market risk. Expect a range of fees depending on the bank and the type of service. Over-the-counter in-branch exchanges may cost more than organized electronic exchanges. An insured transport or special authentication will add costs. Rates will reflect the official exchange mechanism set by the central bank. Be careful of anyone promising no fees or unusually low fees outside reputable channels. Those offers are often traps. Audit trails and record keeping will be essential. When you prepare your own documentation, make sure it's clear, time-stamped, and backed up in multiple safe locations. Use a secure cloud storage service for scanned receipts and photos, and keep one offline backup in a safe deposit box or encrypted drive. If you ever need to prove ownership, having a documented, auditable trail speeds things up and reduces disputes. Remember, in many official processes, the burden of proof for ownership will be on the claimant. Let's address scams directly because these stories often attract predators. Long-standing warnings from reputable financial education outlets remind holders that promises of enormous overnight riches from dinar revaluation are historically a common scam narrative. If someone asks you for personal data, advance fees, or to move money overseas to reserve your rate, treat that as an urgent red flag. Scammers exploit excitement and gaps in official information. Your safest route is to verify with banks directly and use documented, insured processes. If you're thinking about selling or protecting gains, think through tax and legal consequences now. Depending on your jurisdiction, converting currency could create tax events. Consult a qualified tax advisor before large transactions. Keeping careful records of acquisition costs, dates, and sale proceeds will help with accurate reporting later. Don't assume tax rules are simple. Consult a professional who understands foreign currency transactions in your country to avoid surprises. For those who are not holders but follow RV news, a practical stance is to watch official channels and avoid speculation-driven purchases. The dinar market has a long history of rumor-driven spikes. If you're not already a holder, buying now in hopes of a sudden revaluation is a speculative gamble and often comes with very high risk. Consider alternative, diversified investments that align with your broader financial plan rather than chasing a speculative narrative. How should you track official announcements? Subscribe to the official Central Bank of Iraq communications and the verified communications of major banks you consider using. Follow reputable financial news services and established financial analysts for context. Avoid relying solely on social media, which can accelerate rumors. When you do see chatter, treat it as a prompt to verify, not as confirmation. Now, here is a practical 9-step readiness checklist you can start today. 1. Inventory every note with serial numbers and condition notes. Photograph front and back of each high-value note and store images securely. Gather and scan all purchase receipts, bank transfers, and acquisition history. 4. Keep copies of your photo ID and proof of address ready. 5. Store notes in secure, insured locations. Pre-vet at least 2 legitimate banks for documentation requirements. 7. Avoid sharing images of large holdings publicly. 8. Keep a timeline of official announcements and bank communications. Consult a tax professional about potential reporting obligations. Follow this checklist to reduce friction and protect yourself. Finally, a simple, practical note about patience and skepticism. The involvement or preparatory steps by banks is a sign that systems are being thought through, but it's not a guarantee of immediate or spectacular outcomes. Treat each update as a data point. Organize, document, secure, and diversify. Use community channels wisely, but verify through official channels. Stay calm and methodical. If an official program launches, being prepared will make the difference between a stressful scramble and a smooth, verified exchange. Thank you for watching this deep update. If you want, in the next video, I'll walk through how to prepare a printable inventory sheet template and how to approach a bank conversation with clear questions so you get direct answers instead of confusing statements. If you found this useful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss practical walkthroughs and checklists that won't waste your time. Keep your questions in the comments and I'll respond with follow-up videos answering the most common, practical inquiries. Stay safe, stay organized, and stay skeptical. That combination is the strongest preparation any IQD holder can have.